Wait, what the f? Israeli tank fire kills 5 IDF soldiers in North Gaza? Wait, what? Wait, hold up. I didn't even know this happened. The f.
Israeli army says 5 of its soldiers were killed when they were mistakenly fired on by one of its tanks in northern Gaza. 2 shells were fired at paratroopers in Jabalia. These images show the aftermath of an Israeli strike in Jabalia. Israeli ground forces re-entered the area earlier this month. With more, here's our correspondent Dan Johnson in Jerusalem.
We know that 5 soldiers from the IDF.
Yeah, first time the IDF actually fought terrorists. Well, not the first time. Let's be real. They have a lot of friendly fire incidents. So
their lives yesterday in the north of Gaza. This is in Jabalia, an area that the Israeli military has had to return to, having previously declared it cleared of Hamas fighters earlier in this conflict. Around January, they completed military operations in that area, but have had to go back there in the last few days. And that's raised a question over the sustainability of Israel's military strategy here, whether they are actually able to sustainably clear out Hamas for good. And that is something that is now playing out at the top of Israeli government. We have the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, challenging.
They thought they were Hamas. IDF tank kills 5, wounds 7 in Gaza friendly fire accident. IDF releases names. The tanks were said to be under extreme pressure from dozens of rocket-propelled grenade attacks in the area. All openings into the tanks, including the canopy on the top, were ordered to be kept closed to avoid any hole or vulnerability. This, in turn, limited the tank's visibility. Tank Unit 82 soldiers said that they saw a potential threat and the barrel of a weapon emerge from the 3-floor battalion headquarters, which was only 10 to 20 meters away from them. Soldiers hit by the tank were from Unit 202's. Oh my God, they're a Haredi integrated unit. Oh my God. Oh my God, that makes it funnier. Oh, Jesus Christ. Bro, listen. You should have kept studying religion, okay? The Haredi integrated unit originally, okay, so the Haredi integrated unit, and I've talked about this before, a lot of the Haredi population in Israel get religious exemption from serving in the IDF. Some of which are anti-Zionist, of course, remember, and many who are not anti-Zionist, very pro-Zionist, very fucking aggressively, demanding that Israel kill as many people as they possibly can, while simultaneously not serving in the military. This has been a long debate, a long point of contention amongst Israeli society. And if you recall, there was, I made some jokes about this, like, in the beginning, like in early October, when like a lot of the Haredi population were like, no, actually, we are now volunteering for the IDF. We are voluntarily joining the IDF, which meant that many of them were not actually properly trained. It is kind of wild that they're in the middle of fucking Jabalia, by the way. Why the fuck would a Haredi unit be in the middle of Jabalia? Despite remaining silent or agnostic on the details of integrating Haredim into the IDF, when the main plan was rolled out, IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi delivered a major address on Tuesday to the need to greatly widen military service, a code for calling to integrate the Haredim and Arab Israelis, ? He did provide details. On how it could be done. Wait, what is this? Another soldier died in an accident today? The military announces the death of a reservist who was killed earlier today in an operational accident on the border of the Gaza Strip. His name, Sergeant Major Ron Yavetz, 39 of the Bislamach Brigade's 8628th Battalion from Medine. Yavetz was killed, and another 4 troops were lightly hurt as a blast caused by Israeli munitions in a military zone near the Black Arab Memorial Site on the border. The cause of the blast is still under investigation. Bro, that's the oldest person I've ever seen so far. That's like, that literally is it should be the highest ranking dude of all time. What the fuck's happening here? Yeah, 39 and only a sergeant major. Motherfucker was not good at his job. I know. Shocking. IDF investigation. This is from April 30th. 2 reservists killed in Gaza by friendly fire. I mean, this kind of stuff happens quite a bit. I'm just, I didn't realize they were, it was a Haredi integrated unit. It was unclear why they did not recognize the battalion headquarters. However, the IDF said that the tanks had taken over the junction in Jabalia around 9 a.m. and the battalion headquarters deputy commander had only arrived many hours later. They were a part of the paratroopers brigade, so they likely would have been pretty well trained. Yeah, well, Sergeant Major is the highest enlisted position, at least in the U.S. Army. No, we're making a joke because he's 39, and the Israeli Army has rank inflation. Like we're saying, like if you're 39 in the IDF, you have to be like a rear brigadier, admiral, general, whatever the fuck. Okay, let's finish.
The Prime Minister to set out a clear plan for how Gaza will be governed once the military operation is over. And if I show you the front pages of some of the Israeli press this morning, you've got Yoav Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu there. The headline says, "This is no way to run a war." And on this paper, you've got a headline saying that a military government in Gaza would mean only blood and sacrifices without purpose. You've got the Jerusalem Post there saying Gallant slams Netanyahu indecisiveness on Gaza.
This is what Time Without OVO was talking about earlier. The back and forth. The back and forth arguments within the war cabinet finally coming into full display in the eyes of the public instead of just simply saying like here and there, offering anonymous quotes from one side here and there, leaking certain parts of the conversations here and there. This is like full-blown contradictions inside of the war cabinet.
Gaza. And the defense minister said he'd been asking for these assurances repeatedly since October, but the Prime Minister had not been able to lay out any clear plan of how the Palestinian people in Gaza would be governed after the military operation concludes. There are questions about who will represent them, how will they rebuild their infrastructure, what will the role of the Israelis, other nations and international organizations be? Prime Minister,
I mean, you don't have to ask that question at all when, your goal is to do ethnic cleansing, right? Wild that this question has not been answered since day one. You know what I mean? Wild, in my opinion.
Netanyahu's response to that challenge yesterday was just to say that his priority right now is to eradicate Hamas and that he would not consider any sort of deal or power sharing arrangement with the Palestinian Authority, who he considered to be supportive of terrorism. So that question remains open. In the meantime, there is this division at the top of Israeli politics, which has now led to some in the government calling for the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to be sacked from his role.
Yeah, interestingly, though, another member of the war cabinet, Benny Gantz, in support of what Mr. Gallant was saying.
Yes, there has been support. He's been defended by Benny Gantz, others calling for him to go, saying that the defence minister failed on October the 7th, that he continued to fail, and that he should now be removed from his position. So the focus now is on how Benjamin Netanyahu responds to that. Will he keep Mr. Gallant in his position? He tried to sack him a year ago before the October the 7th attacks, and there were mass street protests that erupted then that meant Mr. Gallant was able to stay in his role. There's a suggestion here that his position in calling for a clear plan puts him in closer alignment with what the Americans want to see, and everyone seems to accept that once the military operation is over, Benjamin Netanyahu's future doesn't look like it can continue at the top of Israeli politics. So perhaps this is Mr. Gallant positioning himself with the Americans as a future prime minister, not just to conclude the war, but then to lay out a future for Gaza.
Dan Johnson reporting.
No, Gallant is still Likud. The one that is that you're confusing for liberal is Benny Gantz, who is also a former general. Benny Gantz is a former general and also ran against Benjamin Netanyahu very famously by saying, like, look at all the war crimes that I did in the prior sieges. Like, I'm actually the real one. They're all bad. There's not a single good person in the war cabinet, obviously. They are all, to varying degrees, genocidal monsters. Benny Gantz is supposed to be America's guy in the room, like the guy that America is investing in, and saying that, like, he will lead Israel down a different path. Meanwhile, in certain conversations, Benny Gantz, who, once again, I have to remind you, literally personally posted up his war crimes when running against Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Bush versus Kerry. No. Don't ever disrespect Kerry like that. Benny Gantz is nowhere like Kerry. Are you kidding me? No shot. I mean, I'm not exactly fond of the guy, but John Kerry is infinitely better than Benny Gantz. That's crazy. That's actually wild. Yeah, it's more like Bush versus McCain, I guess. It's more like Bush versus McCain because, like, McCain is more hawkish. Even though he's seen as like a more liberal person to Bush, he's more hawkish than Bush. And Benny Gantz is more hawkish than Netanyahu in many aspects. Like internally, he's one of the fucking pressure points that is demanding more bloodshed in a different direction than like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are demanding. This doesn't mean that like Netanyahu isn't hawkish, by the way. He is.